Hello, and welcome to the Narrow Way program. This is John Butero, your speaker. And on today's program, we're going to be doing a message on the subject of unbelief. Unbelief. And we're going to be taking for our main text Hebrews chapter 3, verses 7 through 19. So if you have your King James Bible handy and you'd like to follow along with me, that's where I'm going to be starting at. And also, we'll be going into some other scriptures as well that relate to this passage in Hebrews. So if you want to follow along, again, if you have a King James Bible, feel free to do so. Hebrews chapter 3, and starting at verse 7. It says, "Wherefore, as the Holy Ghost saith, Today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation, in the day of the temptation in the wilderness. When your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation, and said, They do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelieving in departing from the living God. But exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. For we are made partakers of Christ, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. While it is said, Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation. For some, when they had heard, did provoke. Howbeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moses. But with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness? And to whom sware he that they should not enter into his rest, but to them that believed not? So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief." Of course, this story here, he's referencing back to the children of Israel after Moses had led them out of Egyptian bondage and was leading them to the promised land. I think just about everybody that's been in church for any length of time knows the story about how that the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years before they were allowed to actually enter into the promised land. And I know that when I was growing up, before I had a lot of Bible knowledge, before I had actually read the Bible myself and saw the whole story, I used to always wonder about that 40 years to go from Egypt to the Promised Land, and couldn't understand why it took them so long to do that. Of course, if you've actually taken the time to read through the Bible, you do know what exactly caused that, but I was thinking about this and how long it should have taken them to actually be able to enter the promised land. Had they just simply left Egypt and gone straight to the land of Canaan, how long it should have took them. When I was looking this up in some different places, it was estimated that had the children of Israel left Egypt and gone, I'm talking about just individual people simply walking straight from Egypt to the land of Canaan, it was estimated that they could have done this on about a 4 days journey. Now that was, again, just simply going, at a regular, pretty quick pace, walking steadily from the borders of Egypt to the land of promise. That was not what was going on. There was a multitude of women and children and cattle, and it was going to take a lot longer than that just from the situation there. But even if you were to go to a longer estimate and were to base it on the longest reasonable amount of time that it would have taken them going even at a very slow pace, they should have been able to get to the land of Canaan within 60 to 70 days journey. And that's about what you probably could guess it took them to get there. Now, with that in mind, what is the thing that kept the children of Israel from being able to go right on into the land of Canaan, possess it, and immediately take possession of the promised land? One word: unbelief. God had planned to allow them to go straight from Egypt and straight into the promised land if they would have simply believed and obeyed him. But we know, as we go back into the story there, we know that did not happen. They didn't believe God. When he told them, gave them the orders to go in there and take possession, they didn't believe it. They could do it. And it's amazing when you think about that, because this is a generation that had seen God do mighty miracles. They had seen things that none of us probably, or most of us, had never seen happen before. I mean, major miracles taking place. Now, some of us that have been in full gospel churches have seen God do miracles. We've seen people healed. We've seen people delivered from demonic spirits. We've seen miracles take place. But the children of Israel had witnessed God doing things that the average person in the day that we're living in will never see, and yet they still didn't believe. And what were some of those things that the children of Israel saw? Well, first of all, God delivered them out of bondage from the land of Egypt, and he did it by bringing one plague after another on the Egyptians. That's what actually led to them being allowed to leave in the first place. And God worked it out where they were even able to spoil the Egyptians. And he did all of that for them. The final plague, of course, was the final straw that got them out of the land of Egypt was when was the death of all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. And then the children of Israel were spared from even anyone being harmed by simply having blood across the doorpost. When the death angel came, they were spared, but they had seen all of this. After they had left Egypt, they were at the Red Sea, and they witnessed the Egyptian army coming after them. And then when they were fearful that they were getting ready to be slaughtered, because it looked like a hopeless situation. They were trapped there at the Red Sea. God parted the waters and allowed them to cross over on dry land. And when the Egyptians looked to do the same thing, they came after the children of Israel. God actually took the chariot wheels off of their chariots to where they were dragging them, trying to go through the Red Sea to chase after the children of Israel. And then before they could retreat and get out of there, God brought all the waters on top of them and drowned the entire Egyptian army. The children of Israel had witnessed all of that taking place. The Lord was leading the children of Israel from Egypt to the land of promise with a pillar of a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. They had witnessed that. They had come to a place where all the waters were bitter. They couldn't drink of them. And they were afraid that they were going to all die of thirst along with their cattle. And God changed the bitter water into sweet, and they were able to drink it. They had witnessed that. When they were hungry, God fed them with something called manna, bread from heaven. And they didn't have to do anything except go out there in the mornings, and they would find the manna on the ground, and they would just go out there and pick it up off the ground. And if that wasn't enough, on the sixth day, God would give them a double portion. They could go out there and do it so they wouldn't have to do any work on the Sabbath day. But the children of Israel had witnessed bread from heaven. The children of Amalek, a mighty army, had come against the children of Israel, a group that they should not have been able to overcome, and God gave them victory over the Amalekites. When the children of Israel were complaining because they were getting tired of eating nothing but manna, they were longing for meat, and they were complaining and murmuring against God. God brought enough quail to the land where they were at to where they had meat to eat for an entire month. And for all of that, all those different miracles that God had done, they still couldn't believe God when he told them to go in and possess the promised land. Now, I want to go back over to that story there in the book of Numbers and take a look at exactly what was taking place. Now, again, imagine this. All of those miracles this congregation had seen. And let's say that this took place over, like I said, maybe on an outside chance, it might have taken them maybe 70 days. with all the people, all the animals, the women, the children, and all that. And let's say it took them over 2 months to go from the border of Egypt over to the land of Canaan when they were getting ready to go in and possess it. And during this time, just a little over maybe a couple of months, all these things they had witnessed. And actually, they had been witnessing things taking place in Egypt before they ever left there. They had witnessed all the plagues on the Egyptians and how God delivered them with a mighty hand. They had witnessed all that. All these things were taking place, and it wasn't over like years. It wasn't like it was a situation where there had been time to forget about all these things. This was actually rather recent for the children of Israel. It had just been happening. And now it's time to go in and possess the land of promise. And so God has Moses to choose 12 men from among the children of Israel, one representing each of the different tribes of Israel, and it was going to send them in to spy out the land. And let's take a look at that over in Numbers chapter 13 and starting at verse 17. We're going to be reading verses 17 through 20, and this is the assignment that Moses was giving to the 12 spies. And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Get you up this way southward, and go up into the mountain, and see the land, what it is, and the people that dwell therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many. And what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be that they dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds, and what the land is, whether it be fat or lean, whether there be wood therein or not, and be ye of good courage, and bring of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of first ripe grapes. So this was the assignment that they were given. Now, they were not given an assignment to go into the land to determine whether or not they were able to possess the land. God had already said they were going to possess the land. They were given an assignment to simply go in there and spy out the land and tell everybody about it. I guess it was a strategy session. And they were to bring back some of the fruit of the land. That was it. That's all they were supposed to do. Now, let's take a look at what happened here. Again, there was 12 of them that go in the land, starting at Numbers chapter 13 and verse 25. We're going to jump on down to there. They've been in the land, and it says, And they returned from searching of the land for 40 days. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran, to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. So it was report time. They had gone in there, they had done their spy mission, and now it was time to give their report. And they told him and said, We came unto the land whither thou sentest, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. So their first initial report, the first of it, as they were given the report, of course, there's always this, they don't use the word but here, but it was a but moment. In this case, they're going to use the word nevertheless. But that moment comes. First off, they give the report that it surely, it floweth with milk and honey, and here's the fruit of it. So it starts off pretty good. But then here comes that but, here comes that doubt. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome them. But the men that went up with him said, We be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. So again, he sent in 12 spies, and then we have them giving this report. And again, what was the purpose of this going into the land? Again, remember, it was not to determine whether they could possess it. God was already telling them, this is going to be your land. They went in there simply to spy it out, to see what was in the land. One man here believed God. That was Caleb. We are well able to overcome it. But then the rest of them, Now, it says it doesn't make mention of it here, but there was actually one other man among the spies who also believed that God was going to give him the land, and that was Joshua, which we'll get to here shortly. But the other 10 spies that went into the land of Canaan says, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. Now, there is an element of truth to that. In reality, they were not able in their own strength to go up against these people because they were stronger than them. They were right about that. But they were forgetting that they weren't going up there in their own strength and in their own might. They didn't have the power to get out of Egyptian bondage, but they served a God who was able to do all things. So they were forgetting that little fact there. Then it says in verse 32, and they brought up, now get this, again, originally, as the report started, they said that it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. So they were given a good report, but they were given that, nevertheless, we can't do it. Now it says that the report seems to change a little bit. And they brought up an evil report of the land, which they had searched unto the children of Israel. Now, why would they do that? Well, they would do that because they wanted to make it because they were fearful. They didn't want to go in there. They felt like it was a hopeless situation, and they were going to go in there and get slaughtered. So now the report has gotten worse. It's gone from it was a land full of milk and honey, full of fruit and good things, to it's now changed to an evil report. The land through which we have gone to search it, it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Now here's what this leads to. Here's what the bad report leads to happening, starting in chapter 14, verse 1. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept all that night. I can just imagine the excitement and the joy when the people got to the land of Canaan, and they knew they were getting ready to possess that land. And the spies were going to go in there and they were going to search it out, and they were just waiting on that report. They were probably full of joy and happiness and excitement and couldn't wait to inherit that land. Then they come back and you get a bad report from 10 of 12 spies, and now the congregation is lifting up their voice and crying, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said unto them, Would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in this wilderness? And wherefore hath the Lord brought us unto the land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, Let us make a captain, and let us return into Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. So it goes from joy and excitement to enter the land of Canaan, the promised land that God had brought them out of Egypt. He was getting ready to give them the possession. And now it goes from that, and because of a report from 10 unbelieving men, now the entire congregation doesn't believe God anymore. They have totally forgotten everything that God had done for them. They forgot all about the plagues on the Egyptians. They forgot all about the Red Sea parting. They forgot about feeding them with manna. They forgot about everything that God had done for them. And now all of a sudden they're over here. They've totally given up on it. They believe the report of these 10 unbelieving men. And now they're ready to want to go back into the land of Egypt because they figure it's better that they serve the Egyptians than it is to be killed by the people that live in the land of Canaan. Now we continue. Numbers chapter 14, starting at verse 6. And Joshua, again, this was the other spy that actually believed God. There was two of them, Joshua and Caleb. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. And they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, The land which we passed through to search it is an exceeding good land. If the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it us, a land which floweth with milk and honey. Only rebel not ye against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not. Praise God. Words of faith. These two men remembered all that God had done. These two men believed God, and they weren't seeing a land of giants that they couldn't overcome in their own strength. Of course, they couldn't do it in their own strength. Of course, the people of Israel weren't strong enough to overcome them, but they knew they served a God who was more than able to do anything, exceedingly abundantly above anything that you could imagine. They served a mighty God that could easily give them a possession of this land. He said it, and it was going to come to pass, and they are trying to encourage the people not to listen to the 10 unbelieving spies, but to trust in God. Now, what's the reaction? But all the congregation bade stone them with stones. That's the way they reacted to him. They did not believe those two. They believed the 10. And the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. And the Lord said unto Moses, How long will this people provoke me? And how long will it be ere they believe me? For all the signs which I have showed among them, I will smite them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and will make of thee a greater nation and mightier than they. And God could have done that. He could have wiped out the entire population of all the children of Israel and started all over again with Moses. And he was prepared to do it. Just completely wipe them all out because of their unbelief. Now, the only reason that God did not do that was because that Moses intervened for him. Moses sought God, and he begged him, basically, don't do this thing. If you do this, then all those people will say that you brought them out of Egypt to destroy them. Don't destroy your heritage. Don't destroy your people. He intervened for them, and because that God had respect unto Moses, because Moses served him faithfully, God did not destroy the entire congregation. However, he did not allow those who didn't believe to inherit the land. He completely made a decision that they were going to be completely cut off. We jump down over to verse 26. And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, How long shall I bear with this evil congregation which murmur against me? I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against me, saying unto them, As truly as I live, saith the Lord, as ye have spoken in mine ears, so will I do to you. Your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and all that were numbered of you according to your whole number, from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me, doubtless ye shall not come into the land concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, which ye said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which ye have despised. But as for you, your carcasses, they shall fall in the wilderness. And your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years and bear your whoredoms until your carcasses be wasted in the wilderness. After the number of the days in which ye searched the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall ye bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise. See, God had promised to bring them into the land of Canaan, but because they had rebelled against him, he says, I'm going to break that promise. There will be a breach of promise. I will not give you the land that I had promised you, that being the people that wouldn't believe him. I, the Lord, have said, I will surely do it unto all this evil congregation that are gathered together against me in this wilderness. They shall be consumed, and there they shall die. And the men which Moses sent to search the land, who returned and made all the congregation to murmur against him by bringing up a slander upon the land, even those men that did bring up the evil report upon the land, died by the plague before the Lord. But Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of the men that went to search the land, lived still. And Moses told these things unto all the children of Israel, and the people mourned greatly. What was the reason, again, that they could not inherit the land? What was the reason that the entire congregation of the children of Israel had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years? It was unbelief. That's what cost them their inheritance, and unbelief is what will cost anyone. If you don't believe God and you don't believe his promises, it will cost you everything. Without faith, it is impossible to please him, according to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. What we need to understand is, again, there was a little bit of truth to what they said. In our own strength, we are no match for. We could look at the situation like that, and we could easily assess that it was no way in the world that we, if I was saying, put myself in their situation, in their shoes, there would be no way to conquer those mighty armies in that land. In reality, that's true within our own selves and our own strength. But we need to remember we don't go into these battles by ourselves. We aren't in a situation where we are expected to fight against these mighty enemies and do it on our own strength. We serve a God who has the entire angelic host of heaven at our disposal. All he has to do is say the word, and we'll have an army of angels go into battle with us. All he has to do is say the word, and he can destroy he could just smite them on his own, and he's done that before. In one case in the Bible, there was a story about how God was destroyed an entire army by raining down hailstones upon them. We're serving a powerful God. Nothing is impossible with him if we will only believe him. But God expects us to act by faith. God expects us to move by faith and obey him by faith. And we need to realize that with God, nothing is impossible. If God tells you to do something, then there's no reason in this world for you to ever doubt him. Now, we can go back to the Bible and we can look at some of the examples of sick folks that were healed of all kinds of infirmities, even down to things like leprosy or worse. We could go back and we could read the stories about dead people being raised that took place in the Bible. We can go back and we can look at stories about demons being cast out. But, as great as all that is, again, remember, we're serving a God that spoke everything that exists into existence from nothing. He simply spoke it and it came into being. Now, if we're talking about a God like that, he can simply speak the word and he can speak something out of being. He can change something. He can create something new. In other words, there is absolutely nothing. There's no limits on the power of God. We serve a mighty God. That's how come he could feed all that multitude with a few fish and loaves of bread, and they just keep on, getting more and handing it all out, and it never seemed to run out. And there was leftovers. A crowd of over 5,000 people. That's because he can just produce something out of nothing. Or that widow who had that barrel of oil and it never, or that barrel of meal had just a little bit of meal in the bottom, but through an entire famine, the meal never ran out. They just kept on, every time it would just scoop more out, and it just never would end, because God can create something out of nothing. That's how a powerful God that we serve. So no matter what the situation is that you're facing, no matter what the assignment is that God gave you, no matter what the thing is that God has promised you, if God made you a promise, if God called you to do something, if he has a task that he wants you to do, believe him. He is capable of bringing you through and allowing you to get that thing done. It doesn't matter how much money it costs. It doesn't matter about your ability or lack thereof. God can give you the ability. He can do anything. It's like that old cathedral song said, ask the question, who can do anything? Nobody but my Lord and Master. God can do anything. And when it comes down to us, we can do all things through Christ, which strengthen us. But if we want to please God, we need to be of the same spirit of Joshua and Caleb, who knew that God would do what he said he would do, and not be like those other 10 spies who didn't believe God. Through all the miracles they had seen, they still couldn't believe. If you don't believe, you'll never be able to please God, and if you don't believe, you'll never be able to enter into his rest. It all comes down to believing that God will do what he said he can do or would do, and knowing that God can do anything. There's no limits on our God. Well, that's all the time I have on today's program. I want to thank you for joining me today on the Narrow Way program, and want to remind you that I am with Narrow Way Forums. We're an online forum and church. You're welcome to come out and visit us. Just do a word search through Google or whatever search engine you use. Type in Narrow Way Forums. It should bring you over there. We serve as a message board, and we also serve as an online church. If you want to just come over there and be participant in our message board, we are very conservative, evangelical Christian message board. We believe that whatever the Bible says, we believe it. And we also, for those that may not have a good home church in their area, we also serve as an online church. So, if you want to be part of our ministry as a church, that's great. If you don't, you just want to be over there and be part of the fellowship in the forums, that's great too. But I invite everybody to come on out and check out Narrow Way Forums. And again, thank you for joining me on today's program. And I want to invite you to join me again next week, Lord willing, when I'll be back with another message from God's Word. God bless you.